Welcome back to Even Tacos Fall Apart. I'm MommaFoxFire, and today's episode is a great one. We are diving into a topic that is close to many hearts, and that's the intersection of sobriety and mental health. Life is messy, just like our tagline says, but there is beauty in embracing the chaos, and we're going to talk a lot about chaos today. I want to take a moment and acknowledge something we all probably already know, and that's that sobriety is no walk in the park. It comes with its challenges, especially during, before, after the holidays, and especially this time of year. If you're finding it tough, just know you're not alone. Today's episode is a reminder that it's okay to struggle, and your journey can take many forms. We're still very early in the year, and many made make or break resolutions a couple weeks back with the New Year, New Me vibe. But let's be real, we set ambitious goals and sometimes life happens. Maybe you've already stumbled on one of your resolutions within the first weeks of January. Well, guess what? That's perfectly okay. Like I said, you are not alone. Whether you're navigating sobriety, mental health struggles, or just trying to figure it all out, it's okay to embrace the messy parts of life, do what you can to pick up the pieces, and then do only what you can handle in this very moment. Today's guest is someone whose journey has inspired many already, challenged perspectives, and reinforced the power of resilience. RJ opens up about his experiences with sobriety and mental health. It's a conversation that goes beyond the surface, and we explore the real, unfiltered aspects of life. We'll talk about triggers, self-care, and the changing landscape of non-alcoholic alternatives, which is kind of cool. RJ shares his personal insights, and I really hope that you can find a nugget or two of wisdom that will resonate with your own journey. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. So grab your favorite cozy spot, maybe a cup of tea, maybe a cup of coffee, and join me in this genuine, unfiltered conversation about sobriety and mental health. RJ's story is one of strength, resilience, and finding grace in the messy moments. So let's jump right in.
Fala.
Perfect. It says, yep, fala. There you go. Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to another Mental Health Monday. We are here with RJ of Untapped Keg. Really excited to have a conversation about sobriety and mental health. I think it's going to be a really good one. And I'm very excited just to have you on. Kev speaks very highly of you. So he is here. He says, hey, y'all. Hey.
Hey, Kev. Thanks for stopping by. Love
and
you, buddy.
If you watched the podcast that Adam just posted, we talked about you then too. So you're getting talked about a lot. I don't know if your ears have been burning, Kev, but we've been talking about you.
Everybody loves Kev. That's for sure.
Right. That's right. So RJ has been sober from alcohol and drugs for over 8 years. He shares his life experience around sobriety on his podcast, Untapped Keg, and also how mental health has improved his life, plus its impacts on his sobriety. RJ hopes to create content that allows others not feel alone on their journey in sobriety and mental health. And for 8 years, he's been sharing his journey of sobriety and mental health. He enjoys being a father of video games and playing baseball in his spare time, and fancies himself a pretty good cook. Just like myself, RJ is not a trained medical professional, so you'll see the not a pro above my head, and you'll see the featured guest above RJ's head, so neither of us are pros tonight. In either case, we wouldn't be diagnosing even if we were. So let me start up a queue. If you have questions while we are doing this, feel free. I'm going to open up this queue. Just type !Q and then follow that with your question in the chat. It'll put it into a queue. We'll make sure to get to it. Aside from that, let me just get one more thing going here. And we'll just get right into it. So RJ, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. Very excited.
I like to hear that people are excited. I know coming on here sometimes it can be exciting. Sometimes it can be a little bit daunting, but I like to just have conversations with people and talk because it's one of the things that I really enjoy doing. I get that from my dad's side, I think. So
I also enjoy it because, it turns out you don't know what you don't know. So the more conversations you can have with different people, you can learn a lot more, especially about things that you didn't know were interesting or you needed to know. So
yeah, absolutely. You would not believe how much my Goodreads list grows just through doing this podcast because it seems like every show that I do with a different guest, it just adds 3 or 4 books. It's like, oh, I read this book, or oh, I read that book, or, just those kinds of things. And so I think that talking to other people not only expands what you how you view the world, but also sometimes it just gives you some reading, which is great.
Absolutely.
So you moved from Wisconsin to Virginia. We were actually just talking about that right before this, to give your multiracial kiddos a better and less racist culture to grow up in. How did you arrive at that decision? How old were your kids? And did you talk to them about that, or will you if they're not quite old enough yet?
So I have a 4 and a just turned 3-year-old. It's his birthday today, actually. So
happy birthday!
So I grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and growing up, my first babysitter, her parents were first generation immigrants from Jamaica, and they were a black family. And so I just grew up not caring, right? It was about the person I was talking to. And I knew about stereotypes, I knew about racism, I knew about all this. But for me, like, it was just like I went through life not seeing that, just seeing each person, right? And then I met my now wife and we started dating. And through interactions with her, I started kind of seeing a little bit different side of the world. And so she's from St. Louis, Missouri, which is a very diverse population. And we met in Madison, Wisconsin, which is fairly diverse for Wisconsin, but it's not diverse at all. It's one of those things where they say that they're liberal, but as soon as you get in situations, it's not at all. There's no money where your mouth is, per se. And so she asked me one time, do you see me as a black woman? And I said, no, I see you as my girlfriend. And she's like, well, then you don't see me. Like, I'm a proud black woman. I said, okay. And she asked me if I was, if I see myself as a white person. I said, no. And I didn't, she got mad at me for this. And this was like the first time that we really had an argument and stuff. And like, I didn't understand it. So I wasn't mad, but she was very mad. And I heard a Twitter conversation. It was a video on Twitter. It was an interview with a professional wrestler, Cody Rhodes. And his wife is black. And he had the same conversation with his wife. And he said that she said the words to me, then you don't see my struggle. And that made me see the word, like, exactly what she was saying. But she didn't say those words, so I didn't understand. And I still wouldn't exactly understand it, but it opened my eyes to a lot more of the world that was around, because I was not seeing any struggle. I was, quote unquote, colorblind. Like, I was seeing people for people, but I didn't see the struggle of other people. I didn't see the privilege that I had. And I didn't understand what that was, right? So if you ask me, do you see yourself as a white person? Well, no, because I've never been forced to identify myself by my race.
Yeah.
I have never been forced to enter a room and see all the eyes on me and wonder if it's because I look different or if it's because I'm an outsider or anything. It's just been, I walk into a room and it's, oh, I'm an outsider. That's it. But I don't know if I'm not in danger when I walk into a room, right? So I started seeing all this, and then we are about to have our first child and find out it's going to be a boy. And I wasn't really too worried then, and I don't really talk about this too much, but right after he was born, at work, it was Pride Month, and we had a employee resource group that sent pride flags around to each of the districts to fly the flag. And I worked in a very liberal area in Wisconsin, and they said they weren't going to fly it. And I was like, wait a second, why? And they said, because I don't believe in it. I said, believe in what? What is there to believe in? And they said, well, if I got a flag and I wanted to fly it, the company would say no. I'm like, what flag do you want to fly? That
Right.
they would say no to. And they had no answers. And so I ended up making us think about it. And I remember I talked to multiple people higher up in the company, and one person said to me, you know, Roger, because that's my name and that's what everybody there knew me as. So RJ is my nickname. And they're like, Roger, I really believe the United States of America is like the most diverse and free nation in the world. And when he said that, I was like, I can't talk to people like this. There's no talking. How can you say that? You see what's going on in the world, you see what you're hearing, and all this stuff, and you're honestly going to say that when you talk to me about this? Like, no. So after that point, I ended up getting the flag flown. Like that happened at that district, and it was great. I couldn't believe it. I really thought there was no possible way it was going to happen, and I was getting ready to just. I was gonna go off, but it ended up went to a site vote, and the site passed the fly it. So, and after that, there was a couple years later, my youngest son is born, and the George Floyd murder happens. And when that happens, we'd already talked about moving. We talked about moving before my oldest was born, but when the George Floyd murder happens, and there's one black person in the area who works for the company, and he was not treated very well. And I brought this up.
He was not treated very well in general, or he was not treated very well after that happened?
Oh, in general. It was before. But when you have 10 people in a room, he's the only black person, and you turn to him after it happens, and you ask, why, does that really happen? Do cops really, single you out? It's like, hold on a second. No. No, we're not singling a person out about like this.
What the
fuck? So like, I speak up, and I'm like, hey, like, that's like, I've seen it with my brother-in-law. I've seen it with my father-in-law. Like, it does happen. And then he chimed in too and was talking about it. And then after that, I brought up about how he needed to go to a different crew, and how, he wasn't getting a fair chance. They were not training him. They were basically just giving him tasks to do, and when he couldn't do it, getting mad about it. And so I spent like 6 hours on the phone on my day off talking to higher ups to get him moved. And I had the Untapped Keg podcast at the time, and I brought up how he wasn't treated like one of the guys. And he was like, this is after conversations with him, after I saw him, after I trained him for like a week, and like he was absorbing everything. He wanted to learn. And I brought up on the podcast so he wasn't treated like one of the guys. That's all I said. He wasn't treated like one of the guys. Somebody from work heard it. Let somebody know in the shop that I had said that. Notified the manager. So they pull this kid into the room. He feels like an outsider already. They have the segment ready to go, which was like a 10-minute segment. And it's 6 white men and then this kid who's black sitting in there. And they listen to this, and he has no idea I said it. And I said it out of a moment of passion.
Was he on there with you, or?
No, wow. He had no idea. And then they all turn to him and say, is this true? Is this how you feel? And it's like, who in their right mind thinks that this is okay? And so he said, yes, this is true. This actually, I do feel this way.
I mean, good for him for being honest in that moment. That's a hard thing to do.
It is. It absolutely is. And so every person in that room went around and said, well, I'm not racist, and I don't know why, you feel that way. I'm trying. And they said that. And I never once said racist. I never once said discrimination.
That's their own conscious talking. Yes, absolutely.
I said, and not a single person was like, I'm sorry I made you feel that way. I'll do better. Like, I'm sorry, I can do better. None of it was that. It was, I'm not racist.
It's all defensive.
It's like, So after that was the point, and then they ended up firing him because of the reports. Even though I was like, this is not true. This is how it is. Like, so they ended up firing him. Tried to get me in trouble with management. Like, sent it to higher ups. HR was going to talk to me, and then there were two higher managers that came to talk to me. And but I never said the company name, and I never said where it was in the podcast, so they couldn't do anything. Yeah. But they tried. They called the union and said they were going to punish me, and like they ended up not. And I was like, "We're getting out of here. I don't care where we go, but we got to go somewhere because my kids, two black men, are not going to be given a fair chance in this state. Period."
Yeah.
And the thing that people don't understand, they don't want to hear, is exactly what I just said. If you are told that like your actions are demeaning somebody, making somebody uncomfortable, are, you know, the words that you use, they hurt me, like that means that you just say, I'm sorry and I will try to do better. Period. End of statement. You don't defend what you were saying. You don't do this. Yes, you do feel like a D-bag. Yes, you do feel like an a-hole because sometimes you don't mean for that to happen. You don't mean to make people feel like an outsider. You don't mean for people to do any of this, but you have to say, I'm sorry and I will do better because you made somebody feel like that. Defending your actions makes you into a bigger asshole. Yeah. And if you defend your actions, you're not going to try to be better. And that's like, it was that moment where I'm like, this place does not care. They don't care to see what's going on. The only people who do care to see what's going on are so few that it's not going to change. And it was like we were just looking at our options at that point, and we settled on this area of Virginia. And we ended up moving. I want to say it was about a year later, I think, is when we finally were able to move. But that was the last straw where started looking, and it's like, let's go.
Well, I hate to say good for you for getting your kids out of there because I truly wish it would just change.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have to do something so drastic, but I live in Texas, and with everything that's happening right now against women's rights, I get it. I wish I could leave. Absolutely. So if I could get out for my kids, I would. There are reasons that I cannot. And for those of you who always say, if you hate it here, get out, like, I can't. There are legal reasons that I cannot. So, you know, it's one of those things that if you're able to get out of a situation and help your children grow up in a way that's going to be less harmful to them, absolutely do that. So good for you and your wife for getting those kids out of there. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I hate that it was necessary, but I'm right? glad you were able to do it.
And I was looking for, okay, what's a good place to move to? And of course, the first thing I Google is the best place in America to raise black men. And the first words that pop up everywhere is there's no place in America that's good to raise black men. And it's like, and it honestly says black people, like not just men. Yeah. Like, and it's like, well, at least this one's honest.
Yeah, that's true.
So like, you know, and I'm laughing because to keep myself from crying. Like it's not okay. And no matter where, like, I see it in so many different places, and you know, sometimes it's worth it to call it out straight out. Sometimes that just makes it worse. So it's better to lead by examples. So just like showing how to actually talk to somebody when it's not always comfortable, right? There are ways you can talk to people in uncomfortable situations that make them understand that you need them to do better, but you care about them still. And like that's a line that people don't care to find. They don't care to walk that line. They don't care, you know, they don't care that it affects other people. They want the glory, but they don't want to do the work to get there, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just had a conversation with my 15-year-old less than a month ago. and said, as soon as you turn 18, baby, you need to leave, not just Texas, but like pick a country. And the youngest and I will follow you once he's 18. Like, we'll make it happen. You pick a country that's going to be best for you and your rights, and we'll go there. Like, it's not good here.
It's not. It really isn't. When healthcare is not looked at as a basic right, there's something wrong, especially when you're looking at firearms being a basic right. But healthcare is
right. Not. And corporations
like,
having more rights than some of your population. Yes.
Most of the population.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. It's frightening. It is. It really is frightening. I mean, I've said this more than a few times that we are now a religious fundamentalist nation.
It's awful.
And if you don't believe that because I'm saying it's a religious fundamentalist, like, you're burying your head in the sand.
Absolutely. Yes. And I grew up religious. I'm not religious now. I'm more just spiritual, I guess, not tied to like an organized religion. But I grew up religious, and you're absolutely right. And it's laughable the number of people who will put something under the label of it's in the Bible or it's Christian, and they've never actually read the book. Like, have you read it? Have you read it? Because it says a lot of different things that you really need to be paying attention to. But yeah, I mean, women's rights and trans rights, that's something that is very important in our family in particular. And it's not a good time. It's not a good time. It's not a good look for the country as a whole. Kev has a question. He says, to play devil's advocate, wouldn't staying and fighting be a better teaching opportunity for the kids?
So I've actually been asked this before, and I used to believe that. I used to believe that it is harder to change from the outside than it is to change from the inside, right? In order to make great change, you have to go through the system. You have to go through the hardships. You have to push through it, right? But if it's the safety of my kids, the mental well-being of my kids, the giving them the best opportunity to be and find themselves, then that takes priority than it does my own ego to try to affect the change. And I realized it was my own ego to try and affect the change when I'm going through work trying to, honestly, just trying to advocate for the fact that my boys deserve to be treated as equals. Like, why am I advocating for that? It is the year 2020, 2021. Why do I have to tell you that my boys deserve a fighting chance? Just, and not just because their dad's white, because they're human beings. Like that, it's the year 2022. Why is it that we're not talking about human beings? Like, that's the part that I find it difficult to wrap my mind around, the fact that people are trying to say that human beings don't matter because of XYZ. Well, if you try to say that my beliefs don't matter, but yours does, then you're putting my beliefs onto you. So I'm going to put my beliefs onto you because that's not fair. And that's how it is. Like, that's how people are thinking. It can't be, I don't believe that, so I'm not going to do it. It is, I don't believe that, so you can't do it. And that's what that's where I'm just where I'm having such an issue wrapping my head around, especially with like family members, with friends that I'm having an argument with about, like, why would I leave Wisconsin to give my kids a better culture? It's like, just go down the street, go to Milwaukee and cross the line that everybody knows about, right? You look at all of these studies, and the worst places to live as a Black person in like 5 different studies is Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana. Like, those are the top 5. It's not Alabama, it's not Mississippi, it's not Arkansas, it's not Texas and Louisiana. Like, it's those northern states that are so liberal. So, and the fact that Illinois is not on that, like they're not. As much as Chicago gets a bad rap, they're not on that list. And it's really opened my mind and my perspective to seeing more of people's struggles and wondering, like, if I get taken aback by it, am I getting taken aback because I don't understand it? And if I don't understand something, that means that I have to learn about something. And sometimes learning it's hard. You don't know where to start, you don't know what to do. And so we get complacent, and sometimes I get a little lazy and I don't want to learn. But if I don't want to learn about it, that means that I don't get an opinion on it. And that's what I've come to learn these past few kind of years going through really. I'll say this, and I've said this on a show before, and I've said it at other times. When George Floyd was murdered, Christian Cooper was almost murdered in New York City. When Amy Cooper, no relation, white woman, called the cops on a bird watcher who asked her to follow the law and leash her dog, and said that he was a black male was being violent towards her in the park. She was trying to kill him.
Yeah.
And that video affected me more, and it affected the people closest to me more than the George Floyd video. As terrible as it was, George Floyd lost his life to some cops on a power trip, right? This white woman called the cops knowing how dangerous it was to use that language, but used it anyway because she was upset that he was trying to tell her what to do. And that means that white people understand their privilege and are not afraid to use it. Yeah. So when I saw that video, it made me realize I was so scared. I was so scared that somebody was going to take my kids' innocence when they were 5, 6, 7, well before my innocence was taken, because they were going to call them the N-word, because they're going to say, you can't play with him because he's black, right? That moment I realized it wasn't somebody else that was going to take my children's innocence. It was me. I was going to have to take my kids' innocence in order to keep them safe. But I wanted to keep them safe. I can't let them do things that I did as a kid. I can't let them play with anything that looks like a gun. Anything. A water gun, it doesn't matter. And I've already had the conversation with my oldest. We cannot play with pew-pews. He found a squirt gun and he was going to play with it with his friends. And I said, no, we can't. And I said, if you want, you can give it to your friend and they can play with it, but you cannot.
Yeah.
And he asked me why. And I said, because it's going to keep you safe. And it hurts him, and it hurts me to see him hurt. But that's how this world is right now. And if I want to keep him safe, I have to take his innocence and his younger brother's innocence like that often. And we have to have hard conversations. He's 4, and we've had to have conversations about this already.
Yeah. That's intense and tough. Alex has a question. He says, would it be an appropriate phrase to someone that was upset by what you said? Would an appropriate phrase to someone that was upset by what you said be, I'm sorry, I did not intend to upset you. I ask because I agree with trying not to defend, but I don't want to be disingenuous and say it, I will do better. Maybe sometimes there is no good way to deliver information that upsets them. Genuinely curious, I do try to be better, but sometimes I can't seem to avoid upsetting.
Well, I'm not gonna lie and say like I have experience in every single situation. It's a really good question, and what I would say is this: no matter what, like somebody bringing to attention that something you did upset them, the way you said something kind of made them feel like an outsider, right? That's gonna be upsetting. Like it is. It's just the nature of it, and they're nervous. They're nervous that they're nervous that you're going to think less of them. They're nervous that you're not going to see it from their side. You're going to blow up on them. Like, there's different ways. I do not think it's inappropriate to say I did not intend to upset you. I think that that's okay. And owning the fact that it upset them, that is the key, is owning the fact that it upset them. And you by saying you did not intend to do it does not mean you're defending what you said or the actions, right? It just means that it just means that really, you're letting them know that you didn't want that to happen, and you are sorry that it happened. But then just saying, like, I will try to do better, if you put that try in there, that's what it's about. Like, I have friends, and I'm 35 years old. Like, I have gone through life as a white man at 35. I have not always thought about pronouns, and I have friends that have they them pronouns, and I will sometimes misgender them. And they have told me, like, you don't have to say sorry and make a big deal about it. Just move on and try to get it right the next time, and I'll know that you care, right? So it's kind of the same thing, where you have to try to do better, and putting in the effort. You will slip up. We all slip up, right? We all have biases, and we try to do better. It's the whole trying part, and not making an effort. Like, that would be the worst thing, is saying I will do better and then you don't. I think if you put that try in there, that's the number one way to do it.
It's also important not to say I'm sorry you're upset. That's a different tone. That's a different message. Absolutely. I love the pronoun example, though, because I just today ordered buttons for my son that say, hi, my name is, and my pronouns are he, him, because we're switching schools, and so not all of his teachers are going to understand pronoun usage and everything, even though they say whenever I registered him, I was like, okay, is there a place for pronouns? And is there a place for a chosen name? And they were like, well, we don't really have a place. There's a spot for nickname. You can just put it there. And I'm surprised we don't have it because so many kids these days are trans. And I'm like, bit of offensive phrasing, but I'll take it. I live in a fairly conservative town, so at least they're recognizing. Right. So sometimes on the other side of it, maybe it's easy if you say, I'm sorry, I did not intend to upset you, to understand a little bit of, okay, they're trying, and to forgive that some. Because if the person on the other end of the phone, whenever I was registering my son, had said, no, there's nowhere to put that and there shouldn't be, that's a different message. Or, I'm sorry that you're upset that there's no place to put that. That's a different message than, oh, we really should have that, but no, there's not a place for it. You can put it here, kind of thing. So, just be careful with your phrasing. It can come off as very passive aggressive if you're not careful. Mm-hmm. And then Kev says, how can you sit there and answer all these questions when the Brewers just traded Josh Hader?
I thought, to get on that one, actually, I thought it was going to happen. Like, I kind of was hoping it would happen. And I was surprised it did, because it was a smart baseball move. So I'm actually kind of happy, to be frank. So
there you go. So we're gonna switch gears a little bit here. We got into like a really heavy topic really quickly.
Yeah.
But what do you enjoy doing when you're not working or podcasting?
I really do. I like cooking. I like. I found, so when my oldest was born, I'm a high voltage line tech. So I work for utility companies working on high voltage lines. So that means I'm on call 24/7. And then obviously you have a very little child, like you're on call 24/7 with that. I knew that grocery shopping was going to be tough, and cooking meals. And before him, we really didn't cook at home anyway. So I got Blue Apron, and I started cooking with these recipes. And it actually is an amazing training tool. I cooked sometimes and I was okay, but like this really, it helped me kind of learn some knife skills on my own. It helped me kind of figure out flavors that go together. and how to really cook like sauces and stuff. So like I really enjoy cooking now. I still use Blue Apron sometimes. Sometimes I do. It taught me how to follow recipes, so I can follow recipes better. Sometimes I just buy a bunch of stuff that I think will go together and throw it in a pot and see if it'll work out. And sometimes it does, and it's really fun when that happens. So I do enjoy cooking. I enjoy playing with my boys, like watching Ninja Turtles with them and kind of reliving my childhood a little bit. And and then stories. So like I play video games. I love single player video games that have a really good story. And then books, comics, movies, TV shows, anything that has a really good story, like I find myself gravitating towards it. So that's those are kind of the big ones. And then, that podcast and meeting people, and that is a lot of fun as well. So
yeah, I love cooking, but let me tell you that things like Blue Apron, it makes it so convenient because you don't have to plan stuff out. You're still cooking, you're still prepping, you're still doing all the stuff, but you don't have to plan, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to get this. And you don't have to make the list. You don't have to go to the store. Like, it's very convenient. Sometimes it can be a little costly, but every now and then, especially if you've got a busy week and you can do something like that, absolutely.
And you don't have to really measure either, because it's all like the right amount. So you don't have the measuring cups and the measuring spoons.
And you don't have the leftovers. I always have leftovers, but you don't have the leftover, like, okay, now I have 2 extra carrots out of this bag. That's not a good example either, because my 8-year-old will just eat them, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then Bite Mark asks, what is your favorite poem?
Oh, my favorite poem. I'm honestly not sure.
That's okay.
I don't really read too many poems, and I know that there's been a few that have like just absolutely captured my heart, but I can't remember what they were. Especially like I've been reading a lot of like sobriety and recovery books, but that has also led me like self-help. It's not really self-help, but it's like motivating and stuff kind of books. And there's some really good poems in there and stories. And I cannot remember, but there's been a few that I've been like, this is amazing and I need to save it. And then I don't, because my ADHD brain sees that second sentence and everything before it was gone. So
yeah, she said, I accept songs as poems too.
Okay.
So all right. Song.
A favorite song. I think one that comes to mind, and it has to do too with like where it happens. It's at the end of Arcane, like the last scene, and the song that Sting sings, like that is like the most beautiful moment in a TV show, and I can't remember what it's called, so I'm looking it up right now real quick. But
absolutely.
When I hear that song, like it just takes me to a serene place where I love that song. I love everything about it. And that I would say it's that song if I can find it.
Well, I popped my favorite poem into the chat as well. So if y'all don't already know, I'm sure most of you already know, but
it's What Could Have Been by Sting, and it's from the Arcane soundtrack.
Perfect. So there's a link to my favorite poem in the chat also, if anybody is interested in going and reading that. It's called Don't Kill Yourself Today. It's a really, really good poem. So I always highly recommend it. It's such a good one. Do you have a serial killer or true crime story that fascinates you? It's been a while since we asked anyone that question, really. So this is a good, like, get back into the groove of things question.
I was glad you sent me some of the question list beforehand, because I'd never really thought about it. But I think, like, after thinking on it, I think it's Jim Jones in the People's Temple. Like, that just absolutely fascinates me, how they got people. And you think about like the Charles Manson as well, like how they got people to follow them. And we could extend it out to Scientology and a lot of other things,
Yes,
right?
you can.
But how you start so small, like that foot in the door phenomenon, and like the boiling frog thing, right? Where you start frogs off in a room temperature water, and you slowly bring it to a boil, and they'll just sit there
They don't
and
notice. Yeah.
till they die, like, right, and it starts boiling. It's so fascinating how the human mind can allow that to happen. And I've fallen into the foot in the door phenomenon, right? Like, um, I got a timeshare because it was like, oh, $200 to start, and then next thing you know, you're like $1,000, no big deal. It's like, no, that is a big deal. What am I doing?
Yeah.
Dang it! How'd you do that to me?
Yep.
Can't believe you got me, like that kind of thing. But it got to the point where people drank the Kool-Aid literally in a jungle in South America. Like that is just it's just incredible how you can just have people who want to believe something so badly that they will overlook everything else that's hitting them in the face.
Yeah. Well, and there's the kind of belief driven cults, and then you have the brainwashing. It's fascinating to me when you get to some of these things where they deprive people of protein and that kind of thing, that kind of tactic to get them to just release everything and take everything that they're getting in all of a sudden. That, I mean, you could be in a cult.
And you wouldn't even know it.
Eat a steak, damn it. Or some spinach, something. Can you tell us a little bit about your decision to get sober? What motivated you to do that, and how did you do it, and what keeps you sober today?
Yeah. So growing up in Wisconsin, for people who don't know, everything revolves around alcohol. Everything. Beer, whiskey, it don't matter. It revolves around alcohol. And growing up in this culture, like, I knew about it. And my dad actually stopped drinking when I was 8 years old or so, 7 or 8. And we never really talked about it. I knew that he stopped drinking. And I do remember him coming home and like being sick and being worried about him, but not really understanding anything. So you always went to grad parties, softball games, softball tournaments, like everybody's like drunk, getting drunk. And it really was just a part of life. It was nothing. But I always knew you'd get in trouble if you were a kid and you drank and got caught. And I was big into sports, so I didn't drink until high school. I had maybe 3 drinks going through high school until my senior year. After homecoming, I decided I was going to drink for the first time, really drink, and I got drunk, and I realized that my mind went silent, and all of these people whose attention that I've wanted for years started looking at me like I was cool, like started to accept me a little bit, like I'm not so straight-laced and like I'm a tattletale and all this, right? They were like, oh, he'll go out and he'll do something, and like that was something that I yearned for, right? Was attention and affection and just like other people's love, essentially. I actually, even after I felt that, didn't drink again until I graduated. So because I didn't want to get caught, get held out of sports. So once I graduated and I got to college, I really fell into people enjoying me when I was drunk, feeling like that was the only time that I could be accepted, and it would shut my brain off to anxieties that I didn't know I had, to me hating myself and not realizing it, and all this. Well, after college, my drinking really didn't stop. When I drank till I got blacked out. I wasn't drinking a lot because I knew that that's how I would get, and I would make bad decisions, like cheat on my girlfriend, like hit on other women in front of my girlfriend, driving intoxicated, a lot of it getting into fights, like a lot of things that I wouldn't do when I was sober, not drinking. And I'd wake up in the morning, and my first thought every single time that I woke up was, who do I have to apologize to this morning? Who do I have to apologize to from last night? And I'd look in the mirror and I'd just shake my head and I'd try to make myself throw up because it always made me feel a little bit better after a night of drinking. And so I really started to hate this feeling, and I started going into like these mini streaks of sobriety where I'd go like a month without drinking, and then I would plan like, oh, this night I'm going to go out and it's going to be okay to get completely and totally shit-faced because I hadn't drank the month before. And then it's like, I still wake up, I don't like myself, I look at myself in the mirror, I hate where my life is. I want to start a family at some point. I want to get a career, a job, and get some money. Something has to change. Like, what do I want in my life? Do I want to be able to go out and get blackout drunk? Or do I want to start a family, have a career, try to do something with my life? Anything but what I'm doing right now. So I went out and got super shit-faced one night, and I was supposed to go back to Madison, meet my then girlfriend and do something. And I texted her the next morning. I said, there's no way I'm making it. And she's like, yeah, I figured. I was planning on you not being here. And I was like, oh,
ouch.
I really am a fuck up. Like, I got to change this. And I couldn't keep anything down that day. Water, no food, nothing until midnight the next morning. Like, so it was that my first 2-day hangover was my last hangover. And I decided in that moment for myself that if I wanted a family, if I wanted a career, if I wanted to do something in my life, it was time to give up alcohol. And that was the last time I drank. And the reason that I think, and I didn't do AA, I did it through being a sheer stubborn asshole. Like, that was it. And I didn't like the vibe of AA. I didn't want any homework. It just wasn't for me. I strongly believe that there is only one way to go sober. There's only one way, all right? And that's the way that works for you. So if you need to make a change in your life, doesn't matter with what it is. If you want to change something about yourself, you can't do it for anybody else. I didn't do it for my future children. I didn't do it for my girlfriend. I didn't do it for my family. I did it for me. And when you hear stories of other people who've gotten sober and been able to maintain their sobriety for long periods of time, there'll be moments that you might slip. There might be moments where you'll take a step back, but when you do it for yourself, like, that's when things start to really change. And that's where you really start to take steps forward instead of steps around. Because when you take steps around, you're not confronting what's in front of you. It's still in front of you. It just might be at a different part of the front of you. And that's what I did, was I really just, this is it. But with that being said, like, it took me about 6 years to realize that I did not like myself. I had a deep sense of self-loathing, that I had no self-confidence. Like, I had moments of self-confidence, but it was just moments. I had no self-worth. And it really, like, the past year, I've kind of tried to change things. But it's been like 8 months of me really being top of mind about that being my neutral. Like, my neutral position was, I hate myself with such a passion that I'm even starting to hold it against my kids that they love me. Like, that realization was like, that's not okay. And that was when I really started to take a look at that hole that was inside my heart that never went away. And I'm starting to get to a neutral where I'm okay with myself. And I've started to see how that has changed how I allow people to walk all over me, how I allow people to treat me. Because it used to be you could treat me as poorly as you wanted to. You don't treat me as bad as I do myself. So it's okay. But in reality, that's not okay. Like, you deserve respect. Everybody deserves respect. I think that's been like the through line of what we've been talking about most of the show. Everybody deserves respect for who they are. And you even deserve respect from yourself. And I didn't understand that at any level at all. And I've really started to come to terms with that. And that's really kind of turned around how I deal with stress, what I do with my emotions, with this toxic masculinity that I used to have, with, even like how I look at work. Being alignment, it is a sense of pride, because it's not something that a lot of people wouldn't do. There's a joke that, I heard it from my dad first, was, why I became a lineman? Because even firefighters need heroes. And there's a lot of truth to that. So, like, if it has to do with electricity, firefighters and cops will stand back until you get there and tell them what to do and, make it safe, right? And there is, like, obviously it's a safety thing, but, like, you go into the worst situations and you work through tornado warnings. You work through floods and hurricanes. You work through these conditions that people are fleeing like you are not. And you're trying to get the electricity turned back on and trying to make it normal, And I've worked a 32-hour day straight. I have worked 16 days of 16 to 20-hour days in a row. It's not all glamorous, and I'm saying that, and there's a lot of people who've done more than that. But that is like the pride that comes from that. But the external pride you get from it, like that ego that gets in the way sometimes, it's not the self-respect that you deserve. And I used to always think, like, okay, if I can just get this, if I could just stop drinking, if I could just get a career, if I could just start a family, I'll finally start to feel whole. If I could just do this. But until I started to look in that mirror and say, you know what, you're okay. You don't handle every situation perfect. You don't feel the emotions that you think are necessary in every situation, but you're okay. You're trying. And really in life, that's all we can do is try. That's it. It doesn't matter if it gets done. It doesn't matter if everything is perfect. If you tried, you did everything in your power that you really could do. And if you really tried, not just on paper, I'm going to try. Like, you really did put an effort in and you really did try. That's it. That's all you can do.
Yeah, you really can't get that validation. Self-validation does not come from anything external. Having kids, having a good job, having a spouse, animals. She tells herself that. She knows she was just looking at puppies earlier today. I do not need more animals. I really don't. I promise. I'm not getting one right this moment. But yeah, I mean, so many people chase that as if I do this, if I do that, if I do this, if I do that, one day it'll be enough. And it's not. That's not where it starts from. It always starts from within yourself. And that's a difficult thing to recognize and understand. So yeah, that's really important to get. If you don't take away anything else from this, I think just understand that doesn't come from outside stuff. It comes from inside of you. And that's it's a hard thing to work on. At least for me.
it's something that you don't even realize you're missing until you start to give it to yourself. And then you're like, whoa, wait a second, what's this? And sometimes it feels selfish. Like, sometimes I feel like I'm being very selfish now. And I'm not. I'm just not allowing people to step on me. Like, that's a massive difference. And there's a lot of people that they do not appreciate when you start to stand up for yourself. And that's something that's going to happen. It's just like when you go sober. there's people who are not going to appreciate that you don't drink anymore or don't use. They're going to think that like you're insulting them by not doing that. And it has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with yourself. So again, like when you are going through that thought process that something has to change, I need to reevaluate my relationship with alcohol. I need to reevaluate using any drug, right? I need to reevaluate all of this. Like it has to come from a place of within. Like, yes, it is affecting my relationship with my kids. Yes, it is affecting my relationship with my significant other. Yes, it is affecting my relationship with my family. But if you can be your best self, like that's going to help everybody around you. It really is like the most selfish decision that you can make is to be your best self. And that goes with mental health. Like there's such parallel roads. And when you look at addiction, when you look at substance use, when you look at, all of this umbrella, it really does stem to mental health. And I think we're finally making that breakthrough that it's anxiety, it's ADHD, it's a lot of self-hatred, CPTSD, like a lot of these bipolar, like there's so many mixed, I don't want to say disorders, but mental health topics, mental health challenges that come from addiction. And when we start to treat those, they help us with other parts of our life.
Absolutely. What has been the worst moment or part of being a recovering alcoholic for you? And what's been the best thing about sobriety?
I think the worst part of really recovering was the people that I thought were good friends that I lost. It just happens. Like they're really drinking buddies and you think that they're going to be there, but they're not. They're the first ones to leave you, and that's okay. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, right? Just because I say like something's okay or something's fine doesn't mean there's not pain behind it or pain around it. And I think that's important too. But like the best thing about sobriety has been I've removed this barrier that was in my life that was keeping me from living my life. It was, we act a lot of times that alcohol is really an accent to life, to everybody's life. Like it's one size fits all. Everything revolves around it. It makes every party more fun. It makes every event better. But really, it's a barrier to a lot of people from having fun, from experiencing life. I always thought like sunsets and sunrises, the ocean, beaches, cooking, like the corny things in life, the simple things, taking a walk and hearing birds sing, watching my kids ride a bike. I thought that was like boring, right? I thought it was bullshit. It was all make believe. But the further along I get in my sobriety, the more I enjoy those little things. Mm-hmm. The more I enjoy, I'll just be walking in kind of industrial area of a city and I'll just see beauty. I will hear a grinder on metal and I'll be able to smell that sulfur, right? And I'll be like, there is beauty in making something. There is beauty here. And I'm actually able to see it and appreciate it in a way that I was definitely not when I was drinking. And that is definitely one thing that I appreciate the most about sobriety.
A little added clear-headedness.
Yeah. I like to call it the screen door effect. So the first time I heard this, I realized was when people were talking about going from standard definition to high definition, was like you remove that screen door. It's the same thing when you go sober. Like there's this screen door over your mind. Like you're seeing everything, but there's just like a little bit of a blurriness. You can't quite make out everything. And the further you go into your sobriety, the more you're able to make out those little things, the more you're able to make out the details, the more you're able to see the specifications. And it really makes you appreciate just everything, to be honest.
That's a great way to look at it. That screen door. I haven't heard that before. That's neat.
I'm glad. I'm glad that I could bring something.
Absolutely. Listen, the whole conversation's been good. What have been some of the benefits of being sober when it comes to your mental health?
I am able to actually self-analyze from a place of, from less of like a words, right? But like when I self-analyze, I'm actually looking at myself through the whole thing. Like I'm not making excuses for myself. I'm not like from an honest place, right? And I'm not covering things up that I don't want to see. Like I'm actually looking under the rug. And then also being sober has helped me to actually seek help. So I've had therapists, and I have been diagnosed with ADHD about 3 years ago, and I have tried multiple medications to figure out what's best for me. Finally found one that has like, I did not know I was starting from so far behind every day because of how bad my ADHD had really gotten. And the way that my ADHD works, like the more stress from outside sources, like the worse my ADHD gets. But in chaos, the more of a superpower it is, because I'm able to take everything and file it and be like, nope, we got to do this one first, this one, this one, this one. So like my job as the lineman, there's chaos all the time. So like it just looks like he's really good at when things go to crap. So that is something that like that helped hide it for a little bit longer. But I started to get on such stress, like I couldn't remember words. I couldn't remember like doctor's appointments. My sense of time is just absolutely gone. But like I actually made phone calls because I was sober and I wasn't thinking about drinking. And like I can't do it that day because I got to drink with my buddies. Can't do it that day because I definitely got to get drunk. Like I actually made phone calls and appointments and actually tried.
Yeah, it makes a difference. Just
really
being able
does.
to manage kind of the day-to-day of life, it makes a difference. And I mean,
not hide.
and medication too. Like just having the right medication to balance everything out, and also not drinking, which unbalances further. If you're an alcoholic, for sure, that's something that makes a big
And
difference.
being honest. So like when I go in and I talk to every single therapist I've had, and then honestly doctor, when they ask me, I'm like, I'm an alcoholic. And they look at me like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I've been sober for 8.5 years, but I'm an alcoholic. And they'll be like, well, wow, a lot of people wouldn't like start the appointment with that. And I'm like, well, like, I want you to know, like, I'm not seeking medication to get high. Like, I really want my brain to focus more. I want to know why I know that something has to get done, and I just can't do one thing. And I just sit there and stare at it, and it bothers me to no end. Like, I need help to get started. And like that's really where it comes from, is like being honest about all of this. So that helps. It helps a lot.
Has that ever changed when you go into a doctor or a mental health provider? Has that ever changed what they would normally do for ADHD, like a medication that they would prescribe, they didn't prescribe, or something like that?
Yep. So when I bring it up, the first physician's assistant asked me like if that makes me nervous to try stimulants. I said yes, like absolutely makes me nervous. So the very first thing we tried was non-stimulants, all of the non-stimulants that work for ADHD. And unfortunately, none of them really. There was one that kind of evened me out a little bit, but it didn't really make an impact like I realized that stimulants did. And then when I moved to Virginia, I wanted to try stimulants because it was time. I tried everything else. I tried working on it, and it was like I just needed to try the heavy hitters, right? And so I went to the doctor the first because they have to refer you to a psychiatrist.
Yep.
You can get in fast or whatever. And she said, if you didn't tell me you're an alcoholic, I probably would have given you medication of stimulants. But I don't know if you're seeking medication for getting high. So I'm not going to give you anything. And it's like, fair. Like, I get it. But yeah, it absolutely does change the way that they kind of treat me. And then I actually got lucky, and my psychiatrist is also a recovering alcoholic, so totally understands where I'm coming from, that like this is not what I want to do, but I'm at the point where I have to. And yeah, so it's been very good. And we've tried the least addicting stimulants first, and then that's where I've gone like the whole way, because I know that I have this in my brain. Just the way it reacts to dopamine is just, it does get addicted to it because that's just how it's wired. So
well, it's great that your providers have been willing to work with you and really go through the process too. That's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And like just being willing to try to do it this way too is, yeah, it's been nice.
Were there any challenges to your sobriety during the pandemic when so many of us were maybe drinking a little more than normal?
Actually, no. So for myself, like I had the podcast, so like I got to talk about a lot of my stresses, but like my job is essential. So like nothing changed with it. Literally nothing changed throughout the entire thing, other than there was like a month and a half where we couldn't meet in the office, and like that was kind of it. And so I still went to work every day. I still had like that basis of what my life was around. And then I still got to talk about my stresses and try to be better in areas that I didn't know I needed to be better because of the podcast. And so for me, it really I didn't have too much triggers that were there. The biggest trigger that I've had, there's been two. The first one is like when we're working Storm, and everybody gets together and they're drinking, and you see, all the guys, and it's like, oh, I really want to get into that. And you kind of like, you have a little bit of the FOMO, you miss that feeling of camaraderie. But then you realize you don't have to drink to get that feeling. You just get, your flavored water, your soda, your whatever it is, and you stand there and you just talk crap with the rest of them. And the best part is, you're going to remember all the stupid things they said, and nobody's going to remember the stupid thing you said. So,
yeah. I was just thinking, and then you can remember more of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always the first one to go to bed, so which is perfectly fine with me. But like, I usually just ghost. I don't even say like bye to anybody. I just kind of like, I'm gonna go
Irish
now,
goodbye,
and I walk away.
peace.
Yep.
Yep. Oh, that's great. Alex said, I recently got diagnosed with ADHD. I felt like I was failing resorting to meds, but not doing what is necessary in life. Made me deeply depressed. I went through 5 drugs before I agreed to try Adderall. Still not happy about taking it, but it works. I honestly didn't want it to. Yeah. Literally tearing up right now because you just tapped right into my journey. I mean, was it Jessica? What did she call? Mental health maracas is what she calls medicines. If you have to take them for a diagnosis that you have, there's no shame in it. Like just shake them. That's what they're there for. They're there to support you feeling normal and feeling well. what's normal, but
Right.
normal, feeling more like yourself, more productive, and more even is kind of how I put it. Like if a medication just helps you even out and supports your ability to get through your day, like that's something that is worth it for sure.
And it's really shown me like that it's okay that I, let's say, don't get something done, that I let's say I forget to do something. Let's say that I, struggle with an area that I see other people thrive with. That's okay. Like even if the medication doesn't completely help me, because like I said, like my symptoms get stronger the more stress I'm under. So when if I'm under a lot of stress, like my medication will feel like it's not working at all. And I'm on a pretty heavy medication of a stimulant. And it's like when it works, I know it's working because I'm concentrating for like 3 hours and I'm like getting this task. When it's not, it's like the living room could be a mess that I'm sitting on the couch in. I know I need to get up and put it away, and I look up and it's 10 o'clock at night, and I haven't put the kids to bed yet, and it's like, what am I doing? But it just keeps me. It's my it. I really do have like so much of what's around. It just it's almost like I can't focus on it, but at the same time, like it's bothering me to the point that I can't do anything. And just being okay with that happening sometimes, giving myself grace, because the more that I'm learning about ADHD, like it's not an excuse for why things are happening, but it helps me understand my own brain and why things in life are happening. So like the understanding that it gives me, and it just gives me more grace to give myself for those times where I'm really starting to get down on myself or I'm hard on myself, stuff like that. Like it opens up those moments a little bit more.
Absolutely.
So give yourself grace, because I get it 100%.
That's one of the things that I really feel like is important. Just giving yourself the space and the grace to have an off day sometimes. Sometimes the medication just doesn't quite hit the way that it needs to hit. And that's not your fault. That's not anything that you did wrong. It just means that you need a grace day, and that's okay. And that rhymed, and that made me happy.
I like that. And that's something that before, like, I started to be okay with myself. If I needed a grace day, like, I was down on myself. You're the biggest piece of shit this life has ever seen. Like, what are you doing? And now it's like, I'm not at my best today, but that's okay. Like, it's been, even if it was yesterday, I wasn't at my best. Like, sometimes I'm just not at my best. There's going to be weeks where I'm like unbelievably good. So those will even out with some of the days where I'm not. And even if they don't, like, it's okay if you're not at your best. So like that has also been something that I've noticed, that what you just said kind of triggered in my mind to mention as well.
Absolutely. Are there things that you do for self-care that someone who isn't an addict or an alcoholic might not even think about doing for self-care?
Sometimes I do not go into bars. A lot of the time, I'm okay with it. A lot of the time, I don't mind going into a bar with people who drink. A lot of time, like I said, I don't mind hanging out with my buddies who are getting drunk. But sometimes when I can smell and I can still taste, like feel the bubbles on my tongue, and I can taste that beer, I have to just be like, no, I'm going to go to this restaurant over here, actually, that's McDonald's, because that burger's a lot better, but I just need the McDonald's for now.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to take yourself out of the positions where you used to drink or use, because if you put yourself in that position, there's a chance that it's going to end up bad.
Yeah. You're just taking yourself out of the situation, but not always. Just you have to know yourself really well for that, and you have to know when it's okay and when it's not okay.
And sometimes, like movies and TV shows too, like if they're really glorifying drinking, I turn it off because it's just like, yeah, I remember it used to be like that, and but it wasn't really. So I'm just not going to watch it. So, like, like The Hangover, I have not watched that movie in, it's been like 9 years. I don't know if I've watched it since I quit drinking. And I used to love that movie. I can still quote it. I still sing the song from it, right? But there's just certain things with alcohol that I don't do.
Right. That's fair. So that ties in really perfectly to a question that we got from Discord. And that's, how do you feel about the mocktails that are becoming more and more available personally and also just in general?
I think they're fantastic. I've been saying for years, like, I feel like a company who made good tasting NA beer would make a lot of money. And they're starting to come out. And like mocktails, who doesn't want like something that tastes delicious, right? So if you could take the alcohol out, but keep the deliciousness, because let's be honest, you can do that with just about any drink, do it. Like, there's some people it doesn't work for because it makes you miss what it is. And I don't like the O'Doul's NA beer because usually they're old and skunky, and that's not the beer flavor that I miss.
Yeah.
I actually just posted about this too last week, and a non-alcoholic beer company saw my post and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna send you a couple 6-packs." And I haven't drank them yet. But like, I have a couple 6-packs. One's an IPA and one's I don't know what the other one is because I haven't opened it. But that's the flavor of beer that I miss. Like, so I'm gonna, if it works for you, do it. Like, I think that's fantastic. And there's a lot of people that think like that's a slippery slope to go back to your drinking. But I used to mix Mountain Dew with vodka, and I still drink Mountain Dew, and that hasn't made me relapse. Like.
Right.
In my opinion, that's not where it happens, but I understand how it could happen that way, where you start to think, oh, I can drink this, so if I drink a real beer, like, I could stop myself now. But like, it's not hand in hand. It's not the same. Yeah. So I think it's fantastic. I think we need more non-alcoholic drinks. We need more, honestly, like non-alcoholic bars, non-alcoholic hangout spots. Because the thing with alcohol too is, let's say you have a substance dependency, if you drink alcohol, you're more likely to relapse than if you don't. So a lot of people who have substance dependency also don't drink alcohol. And then, and then there's a lot of life, like when you get sober, you stop living, your life is boring. What can you really do now? You can't do anything because you don't drink. But that's not the case. Like, I've lived more of my life than I have before. But some people, especially in early sobriety, can't go to bars. Mm-hmm. But you miss that atmosphere. So how do you recreate it? So like, there are some popping up, but there's not enough. And why isn't there enough? So, and I think that's starting to turn around too, are these communities that are popping up that are sober, non-alcoholic, really safe for if you don't drink. And I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, that's really cool. Alex says, my buddy Nate loves Heineken 0%. I wasn't making the face about Nate, though. Like, I want to make it really clear. That face was about IPAs.
I figured that it was about the IPAs.
Yes. So some beers taste like bug spray to me, and IPAs always taste like bug spray. There are some other beers that taste like bug spray. Not all of them. Some of them I actually really like. But Shiner, I could drink Shiner all day. But some beers taste like bug spray, and IPAs consistently taste like that to me. So I wasn't making a face about it being Nate. I promise.
My dad's a big non-alcoholic beer drinker. He always has been, and he's really started to like branch out now from his O'Douls. And he hasn't drank in approaching 30 years now. So like there's a yes, like I said earlier, there's one way to get sober, and that's the way that works for you. And don't let anybody tell you any differently. Like if it's not working for you, try something different. Try something that gives grace too, because it's not always pretty. Change, getting better is not always pretty. And if people think, they try to say it is or it's supposed to be, get away, right? But like,
because they're trying to get you into a cult.
Yeah,
we were talking about that
exactly,
already.
Exactly. So if you like the mocktails, if you like the non-alcoholic beer, do it, baby. Do it. Live your life. Like, have fun. Whatever you got to do to have fun and live your life that doesn't involve something that changes your brain and behavior, do it. And go for it.
There are lots of resources online and offline. AA is one of them. If you are a family of an alcoholic, there's Al-Anon as well. Lots of things like that offer support for addiction or for support for getting sober. Do you have any favorite resources that you rely on personally?
I don't have any that I personally use. I've really created a group of people that I can have conversations with, hard conversations that I can lean on for myself. And they're not all sober, but they're all people that I know I can talk to. And that really helps me, especially when they're honest. If they beat around the bush and they tiptoe, that's kind of become more of a turnoff for me. So like, I need you to be honest. Like, am I overthinking this? Am I being too hard on myself? Am I doing different things? And that helps me to kind of ground me. It brings me back to my neutral. So that's what I have created. I know, AA, Al-Anon, that works for a lot of people. There's Smart Recovery, which a lot of people love. Like, I really recommend Smart Recovery, which is basically a 12-step program that is for non-believers. It's science-based is basically what it is. If you go to tempest.com, like they have some fantastic resources there as well. That's actually so Holly Whitaker, who wrote the book that Chrissy Teigen read, that realized that that's why she started going sober, and Chrissy Teigen's now sober. Like Russell Brand is amazing on Instagram with his sobriety. But like, there's so many podcasts out there now. There's so many communities. There's so many open arms. Just trying things on and seeing what fits, I think, is really important. And even if you like the idea of AA and you go to a meeting and you don't like that, like there's another meeting that you can try, and maybe those people will be the ones that you can gravitate towards.
Yeah.
But if you need help with that, you can reach out to me at Untapped Keg on all social medias, and I'll try to help you find something that can stick, that you can enjoy, that maybe will help a little bit.
Yep, absolutely. So I have posted the links over here for Tempest, Smart Recovery, AA. Also, Celebrate Recovery is the opposite of Smart Recovery. If AA is not religious enough for you, Celebrate Recovery is a very religious, Christ-based program, if that's your thing. If it's not, then there's other resources too. So AA is kind of the middle ground. I feel like they do talk about like higher power and that kind of thing. So lots of options, any of that stuff. And I'll post all of your socials as well. So if you want to get in contact with RJ about anything that he's talked about here, just check out all of this that I just posted. There's help out there for whatever you're going through, for sure. If you weren't doing what you do now, or if you had chosen to do something different besides being a lineman, what would you be doing instead?
I really think if I had ADHD medication, let's say going into high school, and I would have been able to focus and actually like figure out what I want to do with my life rather than going all over the place, I really think I'd be a doctor. Because I really find everything that I do that I enjoy, it involves helping people. I like to make things better when I find them. And I'm not the person that like slams the door behind me. Like I'm the person that yells, "Hey, found an open door and it's over here." Or, if I'm clearing a path, I don't just throw the brush down behind me. Like I move it to the side so other people can find it. Like that's what I really like to do. And I really think like the place that I would be able to do that the most would be being a doctor. So I really think that is my answer.
Yeah. It's important to get help as soon as you know that you have something going on, because you can do more. The sooner you get help for things, the more you can do. So yeah, I think that's great. Does what you've lived through with your sobriety journey help you relate to others in some way? Have there been any times where your experiences have helped you connect to other people?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is it's helped me with so many different situations. Like let's say there's somebody coming through the apprenticeship. So being a lineman, you gotta go through an apprenticeship to kind of be able to work on your own. So um, it's almost like a school, you're learning on the job. And being able to relate to apprentices that what they're feeling, like that anxiety, that all of this, like really, it's what I've felt and gone through. And like, it's just one step at a time, and I've told them before, like me going through my apprenticeship, there are moments it was one day at a time. There were moments it was get through that hour, get through that half hour, get through this task and move forward. And like without being sober and kind of going through that and getting through like this day, getting through this moment, um, I don't know if I'd have been able to kind of like see it in other apprentices and be able to calm them down.
Yeah.
And be like, hey, it's going to be okay. But then like it's also helped me, like when we talked earlier, see others struggle, like see the struggle of others, right? And seeing that struggle and being able to relate it in a way that people can understand, like, doing that. I think that my sobriety has really helped me be able to relate those words and find metaphors and find ways that like, hey, this is what we're not seeing, and like this is how we could do better, kind of a thing. So I think it's really been a major help, more than what I've realized in my life the past 8 years. So
That's awesome. Well, it is time for the magic moment of the stream, and I do have a magic wand. While I am preparing my magic wand, though, if anybody has any more questions for RJ, please feel free to type them into the chat. We're going to wrap up here and do our little magic moment, but always open to more questions if you have more. So this is on my magic wand. And when I wave this magic, oh, it's blurry, magic wand, make it not so blinky. You get to eliminate one common opinion or misconception or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, talking about mental health, talking about sobriety. What are you going to eliminate? I'm just going to wave this. And now you have the power.
that we need to be fixed. That there's something that needs to be fixed. And because that means that we're broken. But we're not broken. We just have different struggles than somebody else has that we need to take action to correct. And that has nothing to do with fixing. That has nothing to do with being broken. That's just a part of living. And, we don't say somebody with high blood pressure needs to be fixed. We don't say somebody with diabetes needs to be fixed. There's just different challenges that need to be addressed. And that's where you go. And I think that is really like the grace that can be given if you think that somebody's not broken, right? And they don't need to be fixed. Like the grace you can give people is it's a lot higher with that mindset than it would be if you think somebody's broken and needs to be fixed.
Yeah, absolutely. Kev has a question. He says, we've talked about this before since I'm a bourbon collector, but have you seen in your life when someone who does drink gets uncomfortable around you because they try hard not to bring up drinking? Okay.
So I have seen it. I've seen it quite a bit. So a lot of times when you say to people like you don't drink, like you get the response. It's like 95% of the time. The first time you tell somebody you don't drink, it's I don't drink very much. It's just like on weekends or at social events and stuff like that. But it's not about that person, right? It's not about you. Like I don't drink because of me. So I feel bad when I hear things like this. And, Kev brings it up because, like he says, we've talked about this. And it doesn't bother me that people drink, that people enjoy drinking, they can enjoy alcohol. I mean, it's just like I can gamble and stop myself, right? But some people can't. And, I can turn on the TV and see a sex scene and not go and watch porn and then have a hard time turning that off. Like that's just something that I don't struggle with, but like I do with alcohol. And it's more the consumption of the alcohol. It's not like being around it, right? So it's hard because I don't know I don't know what the right words are to make people comfortable to like have a conversation like around people like when that makes comfortable. But a lot of times with uncomfortability, you just got to take a step, see if that works. If it doesn't work, take your foot back, try to step on a different place and see if that works. Like it's that dance. It's that, do we need to, go to the left? Do we need to go to the right? Let's try something different. Here we go. And we find something that works. So that's kind of that's a pretty good metaphor for life, though. You got to just keep trying until you find your way through.
Yeah, absolutely. My ex is a recovering alcoholic, and he's been sober for I don't even know how long, years and years and years. And whenever he first was getting sober, I asked him if it bothered him that I drink because I'm not an alcoholic, and he said it doesn't bother me when you drink. What bothers me is when you set your wine glass down next to the sink and you haven't finished it, and then later you go and pour it out. And I'm like, okay, but that's kind of the thing, is that it didn't bother him that I was actually drinking. What bothered him was that I would leave stuff laying around and then not finish it, because in his brain, like it's a glass, it needs to be finished. And so I think just talking to somebody, if you feel like you're talking to someone who is an alcoholic and they talk to you about being an alcoholic and that they're sober and all of that, just ask them, what bothers you? Is there anything that I do that bothers you that I can help with? And that's the kind of thing that we always come back to this, but it's about communication. If it's someone in your life who's in your life on a regular basis, it's just the communication. I started pouring out my drinks immediately instead of letting them sit there and attract gnats and stuff, and that was something that worked for us. Or if I was in a restaurant, I would hand the waiter my glass as he was walking by when I was done with it, just so that it's not sitting there in front of him. If that's not something that bothers all alcoholics, though. Like, not all people who are working on their sobriety care if you have a half-empty glass of wine sitting in front of you that you're not going to finish. But it just comes back to communication and talking to the person, talking to your loved one about what bothers them, or if there is anything that bothers them. And I think holding back on things it just creates more barriers to your relationship with whoever it is, whether it's a friend or a partner or anything like that. You just got to talk to them. Kev says I'm the asshole that always tells RJ about my new bourbon creation just because he's my best friend and bourbon is my hobby. Does it bother you when he talks about his bourbon creation?
It doesn't. And it's funny because this is actually a two-way street because he is trying to go sugar-free. And sometimes I talk about the dessert that I've had or, what I'm craving there. So people don't know this, but like when you go sober, like your sugar cravings go through the roof. When I was drinking, I didn't have a candy bar for like 5 years. Now, if I go a week without a candy bar, that's a goddamn celebration. Like I am constantly looking for sugar.
Yeah, that's an addiction I think most people have is sugar.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't drink. It's a medical condition is the best phrase I've heard to get people comfortable drinking around them without oversharing. Yeah. I've
heard that one. And I've seen it used and it does work. So
yeah.
If you don't drink and you don't want to explain to people why, absolutely use it.
I mean, first of all, you don't owe anyone an explanation. You can just say I don't drink. But second of all, if you just don't want to get into it, yeah, absolutely. Just come up with something that works for you.
Do what you got to do. And if you got a ghost to get out of there, do it. And don't feel bad.
Goodbye is a great thing. Just hoof it. Get out of there. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, RJ, this has been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time and just being with us for a little while. It's been really wonderful.
I've had a blast. You're a wonderful host, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
I was so excited, and it's lived up to the hype. So thank you.
Well, I'm glad that it lived up to the hype. So, chat, give me just a minute. I'm going to disconnect with RJ offline, and then I'll be back playing a little bit of Minion Masters. Kev says, "Tell your son happy birthday from Uncle Kevin."
I will.
What a great conversation. A huge thank you to RJ for sharing his journey with us a while back on a live stream. It's conversations like this that remind us of the strength within vulnerability. If RJ's story resonated with you or sparked a new perspective, let me know. Hit me up on social media. I am at MommaFoxFire across platforms, or you can visit the tacosfallapart.com website where you can find all sorts of ways to connect. Your thoughts and experiences matter, and I love hearing from people talking about their own stories or ways that they have taken something away from the podcast or anything like that. Wrapping up this episode, I want to emphasize a crucial point. Sobriety, like any journey of self-improvement, is a marathon, not a sprint. If you're feeling disheartened about not meeting some arbitrary goal, let it go. Life is unpredictable, and perfection is a complete illusion. Sobriety and mental health are journeys that intersect in unique ways, and I hope this episode served as a reminder that it's okay to not have it all figured out. Life's a process, it's not a destination, and we're all navigating it one day at a time. As we march further into the new year, let's also ditch the self-judgment. Instead, focus on the progress you've made and the growth ahead. Remember that every day is a chance for improvement, but we don't always have to be better than yesterday either. Don't beat yourself up and just celebrate your journey no matter what step you're on. Before we wrap up, a little reminder, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to me, and it helps me continue bringing you authentic, raw conversations like these. And a like or review would just be the cherry on top. Thank you for being part of the Even Tacos Fall Apart community. Your stories, your struggles, they all contribute to the rich tapestry of our shared human experience. So until next time, keep embracing the messiness, find beauty in the chaos, and remember, even tacos fall apart and we still love them, and I still love you. Stay real, stay strong, and I'll catch you in the next episode.